Hello, my name is Pasha, and I would like to introduce my dear friends, Carl and Ion. Can you tell us about your sports and about yourself?
Sure, let me start. My sport is wrestling. It's one of the Olympic sports, and it's God's favorite sport because God didn't play football or hockey, but he did wrestle Jacob. And we see that in the 32nd chapter of Genesis when Jacob held on for a blessing. If anybody says football is the most popular sport, soccer, that's true. But wrestling is God's favorite sport. I grew up in the United States, and I wrestled starting when I was 12 years old, and played some other sports. But my coach, when I was 18, really helped me to understand the importance of a spiritual life as well as a physical life. I had very good coaching, and I joined a Christian sports club called Athletes in Action back in 1975, before you were born, Pasha. In 1976, I was on the U.S. Olympic wrestling team as a heavyweight, and I saw the Soviets won the most medals, especially in wrestling. My workout partner won a gold medal. He was the only American that won a gold medal, and so I was very proud of that moment. But right after, the next week, the founder of Athletes in Action and the larger organization that's part of challenged all of the staff to begin to pray for a country outside of North America. So it's 1976, and I began to pray for the Soviet Union because it was during the Cold War. And politicians said that there are enemies. But I realized when I saw the Soviet sportsmen that they, just like Americans, they love their family, they love their country, they love their sport. They're normal people. So I began to pray regularly for the Soviet Union. And wrestling gave me the opportunity to move to Europe with my wife, live and work in Eastern Europe for a decade during the Cold War, and then when things opened up, to move to Moscow. So that's more than just my sport, but that's how I ended up in Moscow, starting in 1990 for 20 years with my family.
What about you?
My story is a little bit different. So we grew up in a system where sport was, in a way to protect yourself, and that's why I got involved in martial arts. And my dream was always to become a black belt master, because I knew that only few people in that time in the world they had that level. That's why I started to do everything to actually get trained and grow to that level. And in that time was very hard to find a master of martial arts in former Soviet Union. That's when I heard that a real master from Korea came to Moscow, and I went to that city with my suitcase without knowing anything. I never been to Moscow, and after 3 days of searching for that person, I found him in actually at Korean embassy, and I became a disciple of his. That was the master Lin Sok. And then he connected me with the founder of Taekwondo. I don't know why he liked me, but he connected me with the highest master in the world, with General Choi Hon-hye, who then started to train me. And that's how I got my first black belt, first dan in 90s, and I was very proud. That was like above even my dreams. And then I got the second place at the first Soviet Union championship in St. Petersburg. And again, that was something which only fueled my pride. And even though sport was everything for me, now I have totally a different view on sport. I still practice martial arts. Last year I went through one of the highest degrees that I got the title of Grandmaster, which is black belt 8 Dan in our system, which is like a combat system of Taekwondo. We have only, I guess, 2 people with this degree. But that's not the highest goal which now I have in life. And I will tell you later why. Even though I stopped to compete in '92 and I switched to coach my national team, and I was the president of Taekwondo Federation for 28 years. We raised 8 world champion in Taekwondo. From one side, I would say that that's an achievement, but from another side, I look at totally different achievement, which actually I would like to tell you later. So sport is still important, but it's not the first place as was before.
Excellent. That is really very interesting. I know, Carl, you're from United States, and Ion, you are from Romania. How you meet each other in Soviet Union?
Was actually 91.
91, yeah.
Yeah, so I went for a tournament, for 1-year tournament to Moscow. I was invited as a representative of my country, and I was married in that time, leading the Taekwondo Federation in my country. I had a child. And when I received that invitation to leave the family for 1 year, my wife was begging with me to stay. I said, no, for me sport is more important than the family. That's why I left my family to get trained again, to get to the level of international 4th Dan, which is a specifics of martial arts. So I left for Moscow without even thinking that I will find something much more in Moscow.
But he did find something. Because the amazing thing is I moved to Moscow the year before that with my wife, with my 3 children, which was difficult because we didn't speak Russian at that time. I was 40 years old. I just finished, retired from wrestling, and but God had given me a heart for the Soviet Union. And there was a new opportunity to lay a new foundation where after 70 plus years of communism, they said there is no God. All of a sudden, people are saying, perhaps there is a God, and there's a Bible. There's a Bible that people should read. All of a sudden, you could have a box of Bibles and people would stampede to you trying to get a Bible. And so I was at the Institute of Biblical Studies for 2 weeks at Izmailovsky Park Hotel, and we had different teachers teaching the Bible, and one of them asked me if I could share my testimony. So I shared my testimony, how God was using wrestling all over the world, but especially in the Soviet bloc, so that we could share our faith. I'd competed against the Olympic champions from the Soviet Union. I'd competed against world champions. I was myself a bronze medal in Sambo, which is a Russian style of wrestling, third in the world championships. So I had reached a good level, but I was there to teach the Bible. And that's when a couple of guys from Romania come up to me, and my colleague Steve Barrett, who's also a wrestler, and they had all kinds of questions.
So just a few weeks early to that meeting, I was in a room, the same hotel, praying actually to God to reveal Himself. So how I got into the Bible stuff and all that, I started to read the Bible only with one goal, to find how Jesus did influence His disciples, because I was leading a mafia group and I wanted them to obey me in everything. And I was interested in Jesus' tricks. I was saying how He influenced His disciples. I was wondering. And reading the Bible, I didn't even thought that God will start to influence my heart. I came to the point when I began even to pray, Lord, if you really exist, show me something. I don't want to be a fanatic. I would like to be sure in your existence. And I promised that time that if He will really touch my heart in a way that I will be confident that He does exist, then I will commit my life. So God remained faithful. In 19 September 91, He really touched my heart. And that's the first time I felt a real freedom. I did not realize how aggressive I was. I did not realize that I was under a constant pressure. And that night, God just, like a veil, took away that pressure. And I started to cry, feeling that touch of God. It was an amazing experience. After 3 days, I started to doubt, though, because everyone was convincing me that I got crazy, and I started to think maybe that's what happened to me, because all that experience was too emotional, too deep, too touchy, and I thought that what I'm gonna do if somebody will attack me? Should I defend myself, or should I rely on God? But if God doesn't exist, to die in such foolish way? And that was the day when God revealed His glory and allowed a person to attack me with a knife. And he was pushing that I began bleeding. But in that moment, God reminded me a verse I heard in a communist movie. Don't be afraid of the one who can kill the body but can't kill the soul. And that guy jumped away. So then a new life started, and that's when I called my mafia group, and they said, you have to come. And they thought that I'm inviting them to give them new directions, whom they should humble, or so they came, all of them, the whole team. And that's when I met Carl, when I was wondering, what should I do with my sports? So should I stay or should I leave? And I was right in the same hotel, in the same time, at the same conference when I met this guy.
Mm-hmm. And one of the Bible verses I shared with Ion was 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 20. And it says to remain in the place that you were when God called you, because that is the sphere of influence you have. So if you're a teacher, remain as a teacher. If you're a soldier, remain as a soldier. If you're a mafia guy, remain in that society of mafia, but change your lifestyle. Allow God to work through you so you can be a light in your sphere of influence. And so that was one of the verses. Another one was, whatever you do, do your work heartily as unto the Lord, not as to men. And it says, whatever you do. It doesn't say, well, on Sunday, do things for God. It says everything. So we should do everything that we do for God, and that includes sports.
When those guys showed up, I went to ask permission for them to come into hotel. That was the rule in that time. And they said, what's wrong with you? What happened to you? You are a different person. You never did that, and you did not supposed to do that.
Never asked permission
Yeah,
before.
you did not ask permission. The people will ask permission from you. And they said, listen, something has changed. And for 3 days, the only thing that they heard from me was about Jesus Christ. So I did not know much, but everything that I knew, I would tell them over and over. And as a result, actually the first month, 7 of my international team came to know Christ. And some of these guys who came from Moldova also accepted Christ. Again, you never know what God can do. He really touched my heart through Carl, because I was ready to leave sports. And Carl convinced me, no, you have to stay and to influence your people. You got something which you have to give to your people. You receive something priceless. You receive something so valuable you have to pass on. So that's what I did. I understood that I have to do that. I gave to them. And then later on, when I came back to home, I started to share with everyone. I actually gathered the whole federation, and they said, guys, we were looking for God, but we didn't know how to find. And there is a way, and Jesus is the way. And the first year, I don't remember the real number, but less than 10 people accepted Christ, and they were a testimony for their families. Next year we had a few dozens, third year we have a few hundreds, and the fourth year somebody came and counted more than 1,000 athletes. And who'd even think about, without much knowledge, without actually a great vision, we were doing what we were taught to do. And in martial arts, it's very simple. Just submit yourself to a master and invest yourself in a disciple. So discipleship is the foundation of martial arts. And when I discovered that the Bible speaks the same, I said, oh, that's easy. That's something which we can do.
Yeah, I lived for 20 years in Moscow, 32 years focused on the Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union. And this week we're with a lot of guys, young guys, even younger than you, Pasha, and that have such a love for sport, but an even greater love for God and for making disciples. And the foundation, the thing that Ioan and Vasily and other guys that in the martial arts, the Taekwondo particularly, took, is they showed what a great respect they had for the Bible. And that's the foundation of Ready, Set, Go, is the Bible. That we obey the Bible, we study the Bible, we make disciples, and whether it's in football, wrestling, taekwondo, hockey, whatever the sport, even volleyball, basketball, which are Christian sports started by the YMCA, whatever sport it is, God can use it, and you can worship God in sport, on the field and off the field.
Vasily, which Carl mentioned, was my right hand. He actually was in charge of our mafia team when I left. So, and Vasily was one of the first who accepted Christ. And then only through him, in a few years, God multiplied more than 800 disciples. So, and I've seen how God works. First of all, we were a federation. We were notorious fighters. And you'll not have many people staying in line to come and to witness Christ to us. And that's why God found someone from their midst. So he found me. Then I was not just with them, I was one of them, and I had the natural love towards them. And now I understand the concept of explained by Jesus in Luke 10 when he says, go and find that person of peace. So Vasily was a person of peace for me. Mm-hmm. But we had about 20 so instructors who accepted Christ in the first 2 years, and every one of them, they started to multiply disciples by doing simple Bible study. In that time, somebody presented us a wonderful tool, which is it's called Precept, inductive Bible study method, which we just adopted and included in every single program. So God gave me also godly teachers. That was a couple from Romania, me and Costel Ogric. They also invested in us and taught us how to stay on the course and not to go to the left and to the right. So that was the beginning. And now when I look back, I'm just wondering what amazing work was done when we didn't have knowledge, we didn't have vision. God fulfilled that with everything. So, now we see that we have missionaries in Afghanistan, Iran, Pakistan, Iraq, Nepal, Vietnam, people who love sports, but they love Jesus even more, and they use the sport as an international key, like an international language to go to all those nations with the love of Christ.
Thank you guys for your testimonies. There is a really wonderful story about how God multiply disciple of Christ. And there is very encouraged me, and I think very encourages others.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pasha. Appreciate it.